Your full names for the record.
Bana Peter Thabethe.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No?
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes.
Do you swear that the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, the intention is to complete the evidence of Mr. Thabethe today.
Yes.
There are a few additions to the bundle that we would like to bring to your attention. The most significant is the filing of a supplementary affidavit by Mr. Thabethe on Friday, the decision on Friday. For your convenience, Chairman, we will put it in your exhibit HHB in due course, but we thought we should just keep it as a separate bundle for purposes of the hearing this morning. If I might please hand it to you.
Yes, thank you.
Chairman, there's a slight difficulty with that affidavit because the Commission of Oaths has not initialed every page. But for current purposes, I think we can accept that it's a statement of Mr. Thabethe.
Yes.
He will be testifying to the contents of that statement.
Yes.
And that by the end of the day, that will be evidence that is before you.
Yeah.
That's the most practical way to do it.
Yes. No,
We
that's
can
fine.
deal with the matter. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay.
Chairman, the other matter concerns affidavits that our investigators were able to find in the NPA bundle of documents. These relate to the dairy companies that Mr. Thabethe says that the department spoke to at some point to try and bring them on board on the Vrede project. Those, Chairman, have been filed in reference bundle F. We will refer to them in due course.
Okay. That's good.
Chairman, when I appeared before you last time, there is a document that I refer to as the AG's report. Mr. Thabethe queried that particular document because we only had 3 pages of that document instead of the full report. The full report, Chairman, is in fact the annual report of the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development for the financial year 2013-2014. So those pages are correct. So the evidence that we laid were front pages that we extracted from that document. If the Chairman recalls, I said I left it on my desk.
Yes.
That is the full report. We have not filed it, Chairman, because we have the pages that we intended to refer to. And with your leave, I then just leave those pages in the doc the rest of the report.
Yes, no, that's fine. I take it that there will be no problem for this side because it's something that you say is they are accountable for the department side of the report.
Indeed so, Chairman.
Yeah.
It was filed by the department.
If there's a problem, they will actually make it. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Thabethe, it's just because I undertook to come back to clarify where those pages came from. And they are part of the annual report that you have filed in 2013-2014. That's just to satisfy you that it is an authentic report that, in fact, did not come from the AG, but was in fact found by yourselves. Are you happy with that? Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, the other matter that I had undertaken to come back to you on is the status of the Mohuma Mobung Pty Limited Company. I have asked that they draw the CIPIC report on that, Chairman. If it's convenient to you, we can hand that up, a copy of it.
Yes, that's fine.
Chairman, those are all the preliminary matters that I wanted to start with.
Does the supplementary affidavit of Mr. Thabethe relate to an issue that he was to deal with in terms of the arrangements made at last time?
Indeed so, Chairman. In fact, when he had the other attorneys of record
Yes.
representing him,
Yes.
he undertook to furnish us with a supplementary
affidavit, and
Yes.
his current attorneys have now
Okay,
ensured that he has done just that.
okay, no, that's fine.
Chairman, if we might go back to those monthly reports that Estina had presented to the department, which reports, Mr. Thabethe, as I have understood your evidence, you relied on in ensuring that payments were made. I will ask you to please turn to reference bundle D for Donald. And we are going to go to page 1403. You have the report before you?
Yes,
Thank
I've
you.
got
We established, when we were here on the 4th of October, Mr. Thabethe, that in terms of this report, what's written on page 1402, Chairman, do you have your report yet? Not yet.
I think he's still trying to find it. Is that at 1402?
That's correct, Chairman. That's
Okay.
the October monthly report that was filed by Estina in terms of the agreement signed with the department. Can I proceed, Chairman?
Yes, you may.
Now, you will see from page 1402, it's something we discussed last time, that Estina claims to have paid 250,000 in the month of September. That's a capital injection from themselves into the project of 250,000. And an additional 3.75 million, 3,750,000 rand, that again they said was a capital contribution to the Vrede dairy project while it was waiting for the department to release funds. Do you recall that evidence that we discussed last time?
Yes, I do.
And that's, of course, consonant with what's written on page 102.
That's correct.
If we then go to the very next page, please, Mr. Thabethe, which is headed Cash Flow Position of Estina Pty Limited from July 2012, we again discuss some of the items here. I'm just reminding you really to give context. Are you there? Page 1403, Mr. Thabethe.
Yes, I'm there, Chair.
Thank you, sir. We pointed out that that opening balance did not have a figure, and then in speculating, we assumed that it's because of the evidence you gave. They told you they did not want to co-mix their money with that of the Vrede dairy project, and that's why you too assumed that there was nothing in that particular column. Have I recalled your evidence correctly?
That's correct, Chair.
We then looked at the 30 million, which is the very next figure, and we agreed that that was the money that was paid in July 2012.
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you, sir. We then looked at the 29 million that was reserved for parlor equipment.
That's correct, Chair.
Good. Of this 29, you then gave evidence saying you had initially assumed that this money would be used for the feasibility study, whereas Estina had reserved it for a different purpose. We discussed that. That's on the
That's
trend.
correct.
I'm just reminding you so that you get back to where we were last time. What we left you with to think about, sir, was that at the time the department, in other words, paid the 30 million, the feasibility study had not been completed, and this was an advance payment, in your view, to enable that feasibility study to be conducted.
That's correct.
But we agreed last time that you signed off on the completion of the Phase 1 obligations on the 18th of January 2013.
That's correct.
That's correct. Now, these obligations, we also know, included the completion of a feasibility study. So what you have asked us to accept is that the 30 million was paid as an advance payment, not because the feasibility study had been completed. Correct me if I've misunderstood your evidence.
That's correct, Chair. The indication was that it was an advance payment for them to be able to proceed.
We then also, I'm going to come back to some of these issues, Mr. Thabethe. I'm just trying to summarize them and make sure we're on the same page. We then dealt with the reservation in September 2012, I beg your pardon, in October 2012 of the additional 1,050,000 rand. And the essential questions we were asking Mr. Thabethe at the time was, did you interrogate these accounts that were presented to you and understand why these monies were being reserved and why you were being asked to pay more money? I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, I'm trying to catch the question, Chair.
Well, the question is whether at the time you were presented with these reports from Estina, you interrogated the various items so that you were able to understand what those amounts were being used for or were being preserved for. That's what is being asked. Or did you just accept the reports as they were without interrogating them, so that if you interrogated them, one would expect that you may have picked up certain things that you would have found strange from the point of view of your department?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I did check the figures as they come, as I have raised with my evidence, Chair, in the last, that I had picked that there was the amount of 29 million that was reserved for equipment, because my understanding was that it was reserved for feasibility study and those issues that we had agreed on paper. But the explanation that I had received in that explanation, Chair, was satisfactory.
You see, your explanation is important, Mr.
1 second. Is everybody audible enough at the back? Is everybody here? Can everybody hear? Okay, looks like there are no concerns. Okay, all right. Let's continue.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Thabethe, the reason we are querying some of these figures today is because we had Mr. Theron giving evidence here on the 8th of October. And he told the chairman that a local company, Aval Laval, that supplies dairy parlor equipment, had supplied the dairy parlor equipment that the project used. If I recall well, there were two, these milking machines that were supplied, a 6.1 and a 10.1. The total amount that was spent was 6 million rand on that purchase. Did you know about that particular purchase?
Yeah, Chair, I've looked at the evidence of Mr. Theron in testifying in terms of what were the cost of this equipment. the only issue here he had mentioned was only the parlor equipment.
Correct.
It did not give further because that's all that he supplied.
Correct.
I'm not sure if he has been referring to all-inclusive that was done. Because my apology, Chair, he only mentioned what he supplied in terms of parlor equipment.
Yes.
And my understanding is that it was more than what he had supplied.
Right. What more do you believe had to be supplied under the item parlor equipment?
Chair, I would not be able to go into the details because that kind of work has been done by officials on the ground to give the details of what is it. Because if I would speculate in doing that, then I would not be correct, Chair.
This is our difficulty as a legal team with your evidence, Mr. Thabethe. We come back to you being the accounting officer. We come back to you being the person who authorizes, at the end of the day, the payment of government money to a service provider. We come back to your duty under the PFMA Section 38 to ensure that you monitor and understand where this money is being deployed. You are with me?
I hear you, Chair.
Yes. So when you sign off on or when you look at a monthly report, when you discuss it with your CFO, you must understand what the money you have deployed is doing for your department. Are we in agreement on that point?
I agree, Chair. Chair, to add on that, where I say I agree, is that when the document comes to me from the official saying we are happy of what has happened thus far, we therefore make a recommendation that you proceed with the payment. It may not be, I want to use the correct word, it may not be feasible for me to go to each and every document and say, I want to go and check myself. So I take it that when the document is saying to me we are happy on the ground of what has happened, therefore I will then agree with that.
I was going to ask a question, but I'm giving you a chance to,
Thank you.
you might wish to ask a question.
I would like to pursue this point, Chairman. Mr. Thabethe, if you had at the very least firm information on what the people on the ground might have reported to, I might understand your answer. But from your strategic position, you would look at a monthly, in fact, this is a quarterly report, and understand that you had a balance as of October 2012 of 24 million rand that had been reserved for parlor equipment. Am I right?
That's correct, Chair.
Or at the same time, you would look at items under September and October and the report itself and try to understand why Estina was saying they were putting in a cash injection of 250,000 in September, and then seek to understand again why Estina was saying they were putting in a cash injection of 3.75 million, 3,750,000 rand in October. You would want to understand why, because their obligation was in respect of the processing plant.
That's correct, Chair.
Yet you are telling this commission that you did not ask these questions.
Chair, I think this question was also discussed before, where my indication has been that. Chair, you'll remember that the commitment that we had made was about 114 per annum, of which work had to be done. We were not able to make that money available. And we had made a commitment that the work should proceed on the ground. It was on that understanding that then they proceeded with the work with an understanding that the department will then later make that money available. So that was my understanding, Chair, that they will proceed with the work, and when we have the money available, we will then be able to pay that money.
You see, Mr. Thabethe, I'm actually stretching the discussion we had on the 4th of October beyond the point where we stopped.
That's correct.
Because if you go to page, same file, page 1372, same file, 1372. Are you there?
I'm there, Chair.
You find there a letter signed by Mr. Vasram to the Exchange Control Department, dated the 28th of July 2014. And if you look at the schedule, the monies that are set out here, they're essentially asking if they can pay this money to Gateway Pty Limited, which is a company that's registered in Dubai. The amount here, the first amount is the amount I would like to deal with. It's for $5 million US. All right, you're with me.
I hear you, Chair.
Right. If you then turn over the page, the very next letter is a continuation of just Standard Bank writing to the directors, again dealing with the exchange control element, just the regulation of how this money would be paid. Yes? It's just a formality, really. All banks have to check on why monies are going out of the country. All right? I then want you to turn to page 1375. Which is the invoice of Gateway Limited, sent to Estina Pty Limited. And it would appear to be that this money is money that they are asking for. The total at the bottom you can see is $5 million US. That amount appears to be for the development of feasibility study reports. First item being the drawing up and presentation of comprehensive feasibility study. And there's an amount of just over $2.6 million for that first exercise. You have seen that?
I see it, Chair.
Yeah. The next item, development of the project reporting template and systems to ensure compliance by the contractors. Yes? $869,000 US. The next amount, develop and implement systems to manage the entire project cycle, $869,000. The last one, disbursements that came in at $652,000. All of these in US dollars, I take. It actually does say unit price US dollars at the top, just so that there's no argument whether these are US dollars or some other denomination. Are you satisfied with that?
I see, Chair, yes.
I want you to then go over the page and if you look at so this is Standard Bank transferring the money. If you look at the telegraphic transfer, you see that the USD 2,000 US dollars came to $2 million US dollars came to 19,780,000 South African rands. You see that number, you see the figure. If you come down, telegraphic transfer, you see the words telegraphic transfer in bold, in capital letters.
Yep.
Telegraphic transfer. I just want to make sure you're with me, Mr.
I see
them.
Yes.
And then below that you see 19,780,000 ZAR being South African rands. You see that number?
Yep.
Below that you see that what was sold were $2 million US. You're with me? What was bought in rands? It came to that 19,780,000. Okay? That's the first amount. Accounting for, remember, it's $5 million US that you were being charged for feasibility study.
Okay, Chair.
Yes? We'll come back to how you came to pay that much money for that feasibility study, but that's not where I am right now. I just want to be sure that you're looking at the numbers that were paid, that were asked for, invoiced and paid. Because this is your money, the department's money at the end of the day, that's paying for this, is the proposition I will be putting to you. The very next page, Mr. Thabethe, deals with the 3,000 US that makes up the 5 in total, 3 plus 2. The very next page, you see principal amount, USD, 3 million. I'm so sorry to confuse you. The 3 million US. You're with me? Principal amount, 3 million. 1377.
Yeah, I'm there, Chair.
3 million US.
Okay.
In South African rand value, that was 30,900,000. You're with me?
I'm with you, Chair.
Right. So these amounts were transferred to Gateway Limited. And if you look at the top of that sheet, this is Estina Pty Limited that is paying these monies. You're
Okay.
with me?
Okay.
Good. I then want you to skip a page. I'm just putting a number of facts together, and then I will ask you the principal question, Mr. Thabethe. If you look at page 1379, it again relates to work done as part of the feasibility study, though the date here is 23rd of March, 2013. Feasibility study, Gateway Limited is the service provider. You're with me?
I'm with you, Chair.
Thank you. Over the page are actually consultant fees, their hourly fees that they charge at page 1379.1.
Okay.
Yes? Then on page 1379.2, we have the names of various consultants who I believe would have been the people. These are all supporting documents to enable that 5 million to be paid for that feasibility study that was completed by Gateway Limited. And here you've got various names from 1 to 10. Dr. Singh, Dr. Ram, Dr. Malik, Dr. Singh, Dr. Srivastava, Dr. Yadvad, Mr. Jha, Dr. Das, Mr. Dabas, Mr. Tiwari. I want to pause just for a minute before I go to the second element and ask you this question. Do you know any of these consultants who you paid this money to?
Chair, let me go back and say this was Estina who were doing these transactions. The department had paid money to Estina for work to be done. How they got the work done, we did not go into those details. Our expectation was that the work must be done. So this document could have been their document in getting our work done. For us was to receive the document to our satisfaction and say, this is what we had requested you to pay. Has it been done? If yes, it has been done, then we will sign it off. So we did not go into the details of who was doing what, who was paid how much of that money. So these are the details of their own record keeping. In case we were to come to them and say, give us the details, they would be able to provide us. But the explanation that was given to us and the document that was given to us, we were very comfortable to be able to say the work that we have requested has been done. So therefore, Chair, I would not be able to explain the details of what is in these documents. That will be my difficulty, Chair.
Chairman, this is precisely the point we make. You put government funds at risk. You did not monitor how those funds were being deployed. You did not try to understand why you were being charged $5 million for what turned out to be a feasibility study that even Duff, Mrs. Mchiza was here giving evidence, found to be inadequate. So this is why I tie that fact in with your monitoring of your 30 million that is reflected on the monthly report.
Yeah, Chair, I do not agree. The department received a document and accepted the document to be what we had requested for. It's for what we have requested for, because we had agreed, those things were put in writing that we had agreed that Estina was supposed to do with the money that was allocated. And those things that we had agreed on were delivered to us.
Let me take you back. Why didn't the department not commission somebody to do the feasibility study itself rather than get Estina to do that?
Chair, we did not see anything wrong in asking them to do the feasibility study, because it was our understanding that for implementation, they need to understand the environment. Because if you give somebody else to do the feasibility study, they may not understand the environment under which the work needs to be done. So our understanding then, we had agreed that they must then do the feasibility study, so that if the feasibility study, if they have a concern with the feasibility study that they will not be able to proceed with the project, then they will be able to tell us.
But shouldn't you as the department have first commissioned the feasibility study even before you brought in Estina?
Chair, we have looked at that, and the understanding that we had was that the model that we wanted to implement was not the model under which we would put terms of reference.
Under which?
The model that they were to implement. Remember, if you do a feasibility study, you must have your background information of what you want to do. You don't do a feasibility study in general. Because if you do a general one, it may not suit the specifics that you are looking for. Therefore, they had to do that because they were the ones to be able to say, the terms of reference of this feasibility study are 1, 2, 3, 4. This is what we want to achieve. Therefore, they will then be the correct person to do that. Otherwise, we would have done a general feasibility study, and only to find that it is not suitable for the intention they want, we may need to repeat the feasibility study because it doesn't cover the areas of which they are looking for. Hence, we had then said they must do the feasibility study to see if it meets their requirements.
But isn't the position that you had to understand yourselves as the department the features, the essential features of the project that you wanted to be engaged in? And once you understood those features, why couldn't you say, let's look for somebody to do a feasibility study, and because we understand the features of the project that we want to start, we'll tell those people who are going to do the feasibility study that you must inquire into the feasibility of a project that will have the following features. And they bring you the study. You satisfy yourself that the feasibility study says it can be pursued, there are proper grounds that it will be a success. And then you bring in somebody who looks at the feasibility study and then says, no, this, I can do this, we can do this, we can move with it. Wouldn't that have been a better way? Because then, as the department, you remain in the driving seat, in the driver's seat. You understand the essential features of the project and the model that you want to do. You instruct people to do a feasibility study with the understanding that these are the essential features. They come back, you are able to say it is fine, and then you get somebody who looks at this and is able to commit to achieving it against the background of the study. Would that not be a better way of doing it?
Chair, it wouldn't be.
Yes.
Because if you engage in a project of this nature, you need the implementer to understand the environment under which to implement rather than just reading a document. Hence, in most instances of this nature, you do what they call a turnkey project, so that you have an understanding of the ground rules before you do the implementation of the project. So that was very critical, because if you have not done the feasibility study yourself, you would not be even privy to the rules and regulation of that particular country in terms of specific areas. It allows you to be able also to say, in terms of the daily industry, what are the rules? It opens you up so that you even read more about those issues, rather than when you have the document readily prepared and you even don't have an understanding of what are the laws saying about that particular area. You may then tend to plan differently from what is expected of you. Hence then, when you do a turnkey, it also allows you to be able to read more and understand, and then it gives you a better direction for you to do your implementation.
I'll let Ms. Thabethe continue, but the impression I got from an earlier answer you gave to one of her questions suggests to me that you were deferring to Estina, whereas I expected you, as the Department of Agriculture, this is an agricultural project. So it's not something that you are supposed to know nothing about. This falls within your field. You know, I expected you to be to have full understanding of everything that needs to be done, so that Estina are not treated like they are experts in anything that you don't know. You know, that's my impression. I got the impression that you were deferring to them, whereas for me, this is an agricultural project, and the first thing must be that you, as the department, must have a full understanding of the project, the model, and so on. Of course, the implementing agent must also have, but it must start with you. That's the impression I have. Am I being unfair to you?
Yes, I will say it's not fair, Chair. Because, Chair, you'll remember that previously I've also indicated this. The department has two roles to play. The monitoring role in terms of the Act, at the same time the monitoring role of the implementation of the project. You also do not want an environment where you stick to only what you know. You open up for new innovations. Now, if it is only the department that does it, we may not necessarily open up to new innovation, because we'll stick to what we know. If you allow it to other people to do it and bring it to you, and you do your evaluation, it opens up and it brings in other technologies that you may not have been aware of. Hence, in a number of instances, you'll see government giving work on what we call a 10P to say, go and make recommendation of what I want. I will look at it and say, yes, this is how I want it, or no, this is not how I want it. So it opens up and assists you to do that. We are not taking your responsibility away, but we are also saying, go and do it. I will look at it. If I'm not happy, I will say so. If I'm happy, I'm going to say so.
Mr. Bashir.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Thabethe, I just want you to understand that the context of the questions I'm asking revolve around, did you monitor and interrogate these items in that monthly financial report? I just keep coming back to where I am because the questions are broad, and I don't want you to lose focus in respect of why I'm asking you my questions. Are you happy with my contextualization of my question?
I'm happy, Chair, provided the question is not saying, Mr. Thabethe, you are personally responsible for monitoring. I was personally responsible as a department to do the monitoring. So this work has been done. There were officials on the ground, on the district and so on the project. And they've been going there, checking if the work has been done. Every time when request for payment comes in, they will then certify and say, we agree with you. This work has been done, it has been delivered. Therefore, we advise that the HOD can proceed with the payment. That is my understanding, Chair, in trying to clarify the question. That I'm not saying I'm not taking accountability, but it was not expected of me to individually go and tick every block of work that was done. Because there were people that were reporting to me to say, yes, this has happened, we can therefore proceed.
You are not taking accountability?
No, I'm not saying, Chair, I'm not saying I'm not taking accountability. I'm saying there were other people that
You have got two negatives there. You want to say you take responsibility.
I take responsibility,
Yes.
but I may not have been able individually to go and tick each and every box.
Mr. Thabethe, when Mrs. Mchiza was here, I have her transcript in front of me.
Yes,
I'm now interrogating the quality of that feasibility study. She told the chairman that they recommended, and I quote, because the basis through which we made the approval was false, the province must now conduct a proper feasibility study for the project. And also that feasibility study will then inform a proper business plan that they must conclude on the applications for water rights, and because there was some indication of livestock that might, and we would not know whether in the business execution there would be some change in the breed, etc., etc. So when they had visited the farm, in her back to office report, these are the conclusions they drew. And the one I'm bringing your attention to is the substandard quality of the feasibility study that led to her writing in her report that you needed to conduct a proper feasibility study. I've told you what's written here. In the transcript, this was her evidence. You've understood what I have read here. I'm not asking if you agree, I'm asking if you've understood what I have read here.
Chair, I hear, I may, because I'm not following it completely. If this question is relating to the feasibility study that is attached here, is that referring to that statement, or is it referring to what they had accounted when they visited the project? Because those would be two different things.
Mr. Thabethe, there was one feasibility study. We agreed this long ago. It's dated October 2012. Am I correct?
Yeah, Chair, there were two feasibility studies. We've discussed it. There was a pre-feasibility study, and there was then the finalized feasibility study.
Mr. Thabethe, your evidence is that pre-feasibility study, your evidence,
Yes.
that pre-feasibility study was in fact the business plan. It's on record. I've got the transcript here if you want me to read it back to you. And that business plan was dated October 2012.
Chair, let me go back and explain it again.
Yeah.
There were initial documents that were produced. When we agreed in July, when we transferred the 30 million, we had then said they must go and do a detailed feasibility study. Now, when you do a detailed feasibility study, you then go and do a detailed business plan with designs of the projects, with maps of the projects, and all those things need to be put in there. Now, those were the things that were done. Now, what I had agreed is that when we went to discuss and agree, they gave us an initial document because that was a document in progress. So each time they completed the document, they will bring it to us, we look at it, we make our comments and our inputs, they go back and rework. So it was a forward and backward in terms of dealing with that. We did not expect them to submit the documents when they were done. Only then we start making our input. So it was work in progress all the time. So they've been producing these reports, and then they will go back and give us. And those parts that had been completed will then proceed with the implementation of those. So there had been a number of documents that we had agreed, but the overall document is the one that was then put on the table eventually at the end to say, here is the feasibility study in terms of the overall implementation of the project.
I will simply refer you, Chairman, because there's no point in rehashing something that is transcribed very clearly in the transcript. I will refer you, Chairman, to the transcript of the 4th of October, 2019, day 177, page 201 of 203, and it will be line 9 through to line 19, where this issue is dealt with by Mr. Thabethe.
Okay.
I would like to move on from it because there's much we need to complete.
Yes, but I thought that from what you read there, what was said was there was no proper feasibility study.
This is correct by the DAFF people,
Yes.
the department, national department.
Yes. Do you have the date, more or less, when that would have been, when that report was made to say a proper feasibility study must be done?
Chairman, can I again just refer you to, I will look at the statement
Yes.
of Ms. Mchiza and come back to you
Yes,
with
yes.
that specific reference.
Yes.
It would have been when they had gone to the farm, I think in July 2013.
Yes,
July,
yes.
August 2013.
Yes.
But the reference in the transcript, Chairman, is the 8th of October, 2019.
Maybe while you are looking, I could put this to you, Mr. Thabethe. What do you say to the assertion that probably around July 2012, I may be mistaken about the time, that as at that time there was no proper feasibility study? Do you accept that?
Yeah, Chair, if the reference is made to that, I agree, Chair.
You agree?
Yes, and that has been my understanding of National,
Yes.
to say there was no proper feasibility study, and at that time, we had not concluded the feasibility study.
Yes, and what you regarded as a proper feasibility study only occurred when? In October?
Chair,
Was only submitted when?
I may not remember exactly, Chair.
Yes,
I think
but much later
document-
than July 2012.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Thabethe, we agreed it was October 2012 because that's what is reflected on the document right at the bottom. I can take you to that particular page reference if you'd like us to do so. We have all along agreed that the feasibility study is dated October 2012. Are you changing your mind about that?
Chair, this is exactly The document maybe we should go back to the feasibility study itself because it's a document that has been attached.
Yes, okay. Is
So
it
that-
easy to get it?
Yes, it is, Chairman.
Yeah, let's do that, just so that,
If you pick up your reference file B for Bernard or B for Vrede and go to page 321,
Reference
You-
file B.
B, oh, the reports bundle, I beg your pardon. Not the reference, but the reports bundle, B. At page 321, you get the preliminary report, which you called the business plan. This is what I understood of your evidence last time. At 321, reports bundle, B for Bernard. Advocate Mkwena is coming up to assist
I'm
you.
trying to check. Chair, page?
Page 321, and the other page is 331. So there are two reports here, the two we are discussing. The first one is the preliminary one that you referred to, which was the short one. And then so that will be at 321. I'm just checking to see where you stop. I think you have it.
Yeah, I'm at page 321. Chair.
Excellent. And then if you go to page 331, you find that feasibility study. Three, 331, same, it follows on the preliminary one. Excellent.
That's correct.
Right. So if you look at, we are now discussing the date of the feasibility study.
That's correct.
Am I correct? If you go to page 332, the very next page, right at the top, left-hand corner, you see the date of October 2012. Across from where the Estina logo is, but on the left-hand side.
Yes.
And we have all along worked on that basis, that is the date of the feasibility study. Are you changing your mind about that?
Okay. Chair, what I want to check is this the document that the National Department is referring to?
This is the document that you furnished to the National Department.
Okay.
you look like you have some concern.
I'm surprised, actually, Chair.
Yeah,
If this is the document they are referring to,
yeah.
that they are not happy with it.
Well, if the report they made where they said there must be a proper feasibility study was done in July, it couldn't be this document
Chairman.
because the document would not exist at that time. But the date of July is something that might not be accurate.
Chairman, I had indicated July 2013. They only came on
July
board in
20
2013,
yes,
Chairman.
okay.
Not
So-
in 2012.
Yeah, so
But
I
have
misunderstood, yeah.
her statement, Chairman,
Yes, okay.
August 2013.
Yes, okay.
The facts are that
Yeah.
DAF was only brought on board fully
In 2013.
in 2013, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Does that help you clarify?
Yeah, I hear, Chair, because normally, Chair, the process would be we submit the business plan to the National Department of Agriculture. And then they will then write to us and raise issues. Which in this instance, that's why I look very surprised that if they had not raised issues with us in terms of that particular business plan, and it means they were not concerned.
Well, The witness from the National Department who gave evidence here, if I recall correctly, said that at the meeting where the Provincial Department of Agriculture made a presentation to a certain committee of the National Department, which deals with these matters.
That's correct.
The delegation from the Provincial Department of Agriculture did not bring certain documents which, as I understood it, they should have brought. But they mentioned that those documents existed, as I understand it. And I have the impression that one of those documents that they said should have been brought but was not brought was a business plan and or the feasibility study. But she said that they were told that those did exist.
Yeah.
I don't know, Ms. Kabasha might indicate if my recollection is inaccurate in some respects.
No, it's accurate, Chairman, and I will simply, in the interest of progress, point you to her statement, which you do have.
Yes.
And it is paragraph 8 and 9,
yes,
where that explanation is given in her statement.
Yes.
That's over and above the transcript reference.
Yes.
Where she really deals with the concerns that were raised by them.
Yes.
After the initial visit in January 2013.
Yes.
So the first visit from the provincial department was in January 2013.
Yes.
Their visit to the farm
was in July 2013.
It's August, now that I've ascertained the date, Chairman, August 2013. But Chairman, frankly, the issue I'm raising isn't really about what they did or did not have before them. I am interrogating paying $5 million US for the only document that has been placed before this commission, which is called a feasibility study. And that is the document that Mr. Thabethe has before him, dated October 2012, Mr. Thabethe.
Yes, I think what I particularly wanted to hear what Mr. Thabethe had to say, and I think it is linked to what you are looking into, was here is the National Department saying, you don't have a proper feasibility study. If they are referring to the feasibility study that, the only feasibility study that we know of, then it raises the question of what do you say about that? Did you work on the basis of what is really not a proper feasibility study as far as the National Department is concerned? Did you accept it as a proper feasibility study? And it might go back to the question Ms. Kabasha raised about in terms of your monitoring. Did you go far enough to check that if taxpayers' money was to be used, there was a proper basis for it?
Yeah, Chair, thank you very much. Chair, if the National Department of Agriculture is referring to this document not to be the proper feasibility study, then I don't understand, Chair, because that's not the impression I had from them. It might have come across so of late, because even starting from our presentation and everything, they agreed with us and accepted. After our presentation, we had a business plan that we presented to them original, which is not this business plan, but it's a comprehensive business plan of the province, which includes other projects. That is what is originally being presented to the National Assessment Panel. Now, if the individual projects in that business plans are agreed upon, it is only then that National says, then submit to us the individual business plan of each of the projects that we have approved. Now, that is what my understanding, that we are not expected to bring those individual business plans when we're going to present the projects for acceptance. Then later, once they agree with it, in the assessment panel of national, then they say, province, these were the issues that we raised. They write to us and say, deal with these issues on these projects that we have approved. Those that they have not approved fall out. And then we go then and deal with the issues they've raised, and we then, over and above that, prepare the documents which then they require per individual business plan. That is my understanding, Chair.
The individual project.
The individual projects, yes, Chair.
Okay. Continue, Ms. Kabasha.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to remind you, Mr. Thabethe, that the Estina obligations for the first phase that you signed off on included the preparation of a feasibility study. You will find that it's a document we've interrogated, the chairman has interrogated with you. It's on page 1378 of reference bundle D. That's the one where you signed off that land acquisition, environmental impact assessment, feasibility study, water reticulation, electricity connections, etc., had been completed.
That's correct, Chair.
And the date of that is the 18th of January.
That's correct, Chair.
So as of the 18th of January, you had received, this is what's written here, the feasibility study.
That's correct.
And this is why we put it to you, that that feasibility study is the October 2012 feasibility study that you had signed off on.
Chair, I agree with the statement. My only disagreement is when the National Department of Agriculture was referring to this feasibility study. I'm not disputing what she is saying, but
yes,
then I'm saying to her, if the National Department has been referring to this document, then I have a problem, because they will not be sitting with the document for almost the entire year, and when they come to visit the project, when there is a problem, it's only then that they raise issues to us. They should have raised those issues to say, no, Agriculture Free State, we have a problem with your feasibility study, because that had been submitted to them. So they shouldn't have waited until October 2013 to come back to us to say, we don't agree. And during that time when they visited, it is when an issue was raised with them by National Treasury. That's why I'm saying I have a problem, because you agree with us, and when there is a problem towards the end, you say, no, I don't agree with you.
Mr. Thabethe, can I continue?
Yes, Chair.
I'm interrogating the $5 million you paid for a feasibility study. That same feasibility study that you have just confirmed is the October 2012 feasibility study. Are you with me?
Chair, I'm with you, Chair. And I understand that you are interrogating this feasibility study. But
No. I'm interrogating the payment.
The payment of this feasibility study on the basis that National is saying they don't agree with the feasibility.
Let me correct
I think
that.
let Ms. Kabasha put her question on the payment.
Forget about the National Department for your purposes.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
I'm simply saying, and this is why I went back to contextualizing my questions. Did you interrogate what you were spending government money on, taxpayers' money on? Yes. We agreed that that's what I'm really dealing with.
Yes, Chair.
So I'm asking what this $5 million bought for you, the department. I have shown you the documents that are in the file.
Yes.
And we started having this discussion when I wanted to know if you knew any of these people on page 1379.2 who had been paid some of these monies.
That's correct, Chair.
The reason I'm asking these questions is because at our last hearing, we agreed that in terms of that agreement with Estina, DAD and Estina, you had to monitor. You had to know who subcontractors were. You recall that?
That's correct, Chair.
Good. Let's move on.
What was the answer to your question? What was your answer to Ms. Kabasha's question on whether you interrogated what you were paying that 5 million rand for?
Yeah, Chair, we had, because the I'm trying to confuse the 5 million and the 30 million now, Chair. Because
Well, she's on the 5 million.
is it the 5 million US dollars?
$5 million. I'll come
Yes,
back to
that's
the
the
30 million.
That's the 30 million, Chair.
Yes, okay, it's the US dollars and the
Yes,
and
because-
the rands, yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
Chair.
30 million rand, 5 million US dollars.
Yes. That's why, Chair, I had preferred that I stay on the 30 million because
On the rands, yeah.
on the rands,
Yes, yeah,
rather than
okay.
the
Yes.
US dollars.
Okay, yes.
Yes. But, Chair, there is a document that was agreed upon. What will this 30 million be used for? And it was signed off. So that was paid on those bases.
Do you recall what that document said this was for?
Yes, Chair, we have the document, if you can refer me back to this document, because we had interrogated that document before. It was the feasibility study, EIA.
There was 17 million rand that was part of the 30 million, if I recall correctly.
No, Chairman, if I might assist.
Yes.
Please go to page 1378, number 1.
On-
1378, that's where that 18th of January
On the reports.
letter is. It's B, reference bundle B, reference bundle D for Donald. It's the one that you had all along. I think it's in front of
This
you
one.
right now,
Okay.
yes.
Thanks, Chair.
D, yeah. 1378.
Okay.
And
thank
as
you,
you
Chair.
pause there, please just let me make one other correction. The total amount that 5 million US dollars came to was 19 plus 30. So that's 49 million rand, not 30 million rand. They charged you 49 million. It was two payments, one for 19 million South African rands, that's the $2 million translated into rands, 19 million rand. Then the 3 million translated into rands was 30 million. I'll go back to those numbers if you want. I just don't want you to get confused about what I'm asking you. So for this feasibility study that we are querying, you paid somewhere in the region of 49 million rand. And this is why I'm interrogating this issue.
Yeah, Chair. Hence, I do not want to sit in the US dollars. My understanding of what we paid, and we've signed off in this document, was the amount of 30 million that we had agreed on.
Can I interrogate that, Chairman, please?
Because
Yes.
I want to be where you are right now. You have also told this commission that that $30 million, I beg your pardon, that
Rands.
30 million rands that was paid by the department in July 2012, you thought was going to be for the feasibility study. In fact, the monthly reports tell you that that money was taken out of the country in two tranches. First 29 million, then another 1 million. And it was said to be reserved for pasteurizing equipment. So let's not get confused about what, in fact, the 30 million South African rands that you are speaking to right now, that issue, the money that you advanced in July 2012, you know, Mr. Thabethe, that that money was taken out of the country because it was said to be reserving orders, purchase orders for pasteurizing equipment.
Yeah, Chair, I do not agree with the statement, because this document that I've just opened,
Which statement, just make that clear so that we can
the
follow you.
statement that says, I know, the statement that says, I know that money was taken out. What I know, Chair, is that on this document in January 2018, the work that was expected was delivered and I signed off. And this is what this money paid for. Now, what happened to the money after the work that we had expected to deliver to us was delivered? I don't know. Because the work was delivered to us and we signed it off on the 18th of January, and that was for the money that was paid. How the money was managed after we had received the work done is what I don't know. That is my problem, Chair, because I wouldn't know what have they used the money for, because the work that we have requested from them had been delivered.
Chairman, I simply point Mr. Thabethe back to, and we're just going to have to play around with these pages, Mr. Thabethe, back to that monthly report. That's on page 1403. 1403 of the same bundle you've got in your hand right now.
Yes, Chair.
Don't lose your page, because I know you want to speak to that issue where you are now. Go to 1403, please, Mr. Thabethe, 1403. I believe you're going the wrong way. Yes.
1403.
Page 1403.
Yes, Chair.
We're at reference bundle D, Chairman. Back to the monthly reports.
See, I am still at B.
No, we are.
So I've got
Back
D
to the
now.
monthly, yeah, monthly, Chairman.
Page
403, Chairman.
1403. Yes.
And it's clearly written there, Mr. Thabethe, reserved for parlor equipment, 29 million. That's in July 2012. We've interrogated the issue.
That's correct.
If you go across to October 2012 and another 1,050,000, same line item, reserved for parlor equipment.
That's correct.
Yes. So that money was not used for the feasibility study, according to what's written here.
Yeah, Chair, last time when we spoke about this, I had indicated to the evidence leader that we had picked that in the report and we had engaged them to say, we see that you had reserved the money for parlor equipment which we expect to be given to do the work that we had agreed on. Then the agreement, the discussion was why I said we were then comfortable, because we were promised that the work of the feasibility study will never be delayed. It will proceed as agreed and it will be completed on the time, because they are using expertise that will not require money to be paid to them at that particular moment. They will be paid later. Hence, we then agreed with them. As long as the work that we had put the money for has not been delayed, and a proof is there for us that, yes, indeed, the work that we had put the money for was not delayed. It was presented to us on time, and the work was done. Hence I'm saying, Chair, that's why we had raised it, because if they had put this money aside and the other work that was supposed to have been done was not done, then we would have a problem.
In fact, they told you, if you just go to the page before that, they told you that they were busy putting money in. They were putting in their own money so that the work you are talking about could be done.
That's correct.
Hence the 250,000 that they refer to, and it is a line item in any event on page 1403. You will see it in September. And then in October, you see the line item, Estina investment, 3.7 million, 3,750,000 rand. They were putting in their own money, they were telling you, in September and October, so that they could do the work that you say they were supposed to do with the 30 million you advanced them in July of 2012.
That's
something
correct.
very wrong there. Doesn't add up. What you're saying doesn't add up, Mr. Thabethe.
No, Chair, it adds up, because the fact that they've been putting their money means that the work was done that we had requested them to do.
Why must they put in their money when you have put money for that work? That should be a question that comes naturally. We've given you money for this work. Why are you putting your own money and taking the money that we have given you somewhere else?
That's correct, Chair. That's what we asked. You remember I said we raised this issue and we said...
Yes, and what was the answer?
We said to them, this money we had put it aside for this particular purpose. And this is what we want to do. Because we had not made the money available for the activities. I think if you will later look, Chair, on the December report, you realize that a lot of the work that we should have paid for, they had actually paid for because they had planted, they have done everything on the ground, and money had been spent. And then in January, the work of the money...
No, Mr. Thabethe, let's stay just with the question.
Chair.
You have given them money to do a certain job.
Yes, Chair.
They are taking that money elsewhere.
Yes.
And then they are saying to you, when you raise the question, they are putting in their own money. The most obvious question, why is that necessary? From your side.
I hear you, Chair. This is what we also asked. In terms
and what
of
was the answer? What was the
In terms of the
explanation?
report that were given to us was that we are putting aside this money for equipment. But the work that...
Why are you putting aside money given to you for A, putting it aside for B? We have given you this money for A. Why didn't you say to them, you may not do that? This money has been given to you for A. You must use that money for A. You can't decide that you are going to use it for something else. It's our money. It's paid to you to do A.
I hear you, Chair. It's the matter of shifting the two to say the money that you have paid, we use it for the purpose of what you want, and the money that we have, we'll use it for the other purpose.
Mr. Bashir, you might be wanting to, you might or might not be wanting to ask more questions on this.
I do, Chairman, but maybe we should take the tea break because
Yes.
it's an important point. It runs through all the monthlies.
Yes, no, it is important,
Yes.
yeah.
Once we've dealt with this, then we can deal
Yeah.
with all the other issues.
Okay, it's about 20 past. We'll take tea adjournment and resume at 25 to 12. We adjourn.
All rise.
Okay, let's proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Thabethe, back with you.
Thank you, Chair.
We're trying to understand what monies were paid for. I keep saying this. eh? You're with me. And the proposition I put to you just before we rose for tea, was that if we look at those monthly reports, and if we accept what is written on page 1403, that 30 million, just over 30 million was reserved. We can agree on that was reserved. And if we are not agreeing, let's just clear that first one. Was it reserved or wasn't it reserved when you interrogated this? What was your final take?
Chair, in terms of the report that we received, they made an indication that they were reserving the money.
You accepted that?
After interrogating, we agreed, Chair.
So we can tick, you accepted that this 30 million was reserved?
For equipment, yes, Chair.
For parlor equipment? Good.
Yes.
Our next point is, you then had to pay for the feasibility study, and I'm going to take you back to where you wanted to be earlier on. You know that phase one, those obligations, that's where I'm
Yes.
going.
Yes, Chair.
You'll find them on page 1378.
Yes, correct, Chair.
So you had to pay for these obligations that had now been completed as at the 18th of January 2013.
Yes, Chair, we paid, we had already transferred the money for them to be done.
No, this is what I want us, just to take it slowly, Mr. Thabethe. We have just agreed that the money you transferred in July 2012 is the same money that is on the monthly report that was reserved for parlor equipment.
Chair, when we signed off this report in January, it was signing off the money that was put for this particular purpose as paid. That's why I'm confused, Chair, with the question, because we had then signed off this money because the work that it was meant for, it was done.
I think we should move on, Mr. Thabethe, and at this rate, I'm forced to just draw conclusions from the record as it stands, because we can't stay on one point all morning. Can I ask you this question? If you go to page 1375, are you able to tell us whether you knew about any of these items that Gateway say they had done work on? Do you know anything at all about this?
No, Chair, I don't know anything about this report.
I think this is the better way to proceed. And then on the very next page, there is a payment of, in South African rands, 19,780,000 rand. You don't know what this money was for that was paid.
No, I don't know.
I think this is the easier way to proceed, Mr. Thabethe. Then the very next page, we have 30 million South African rand, 30,900,000 South African rand that were paid again by Estina to Gateway. You don't know what this was for?
No, I don't know.
Is that the best way to? Okay, good. The very next page then is your phase one, the phase one obligations. We have dealt with those.
That's correct.
We go over the page and we get to a document on page 1379, which is dated the 22nd of March, 2013, which talks about the 22nd of March, summary of completed works, feasibility study, Gateway Limited. Do you know what this feasibility study they're referring to refers to, is what it is about?
No, Chair, I don't know, because I had not been provided with such a document before.
The only feasibility study you know is the October 2012 feasibility study.
Yes, Chair, but in terms of the feasibility study, the document I know is the one that we have referred to.
Correct.
Yes.
I'm comfortable with that knowledge of yours. So on the 22nd of March, there's this invoice for feasibility study, followed by hourly rates, followed by, again, dated April 2013, a list of consultants who appear to have done work on the feasibility study.
I see it, Chair.
The only thing I can surmise, and these are not facts, the only thing I can surmise from this is that these are the people who did work on the feasibility study, and when money became available in the new financial year, they were able to present their invoice. That's the best I can do. I don't know if you want to apply your mind to what these documents might represent in the context of the feasibility study you know you had in October 2012.
Yeah, I don't know, Chair, if that is the case or not, because these were their documents.
That's fine. I just want to understand what you thought your money was being used for, what you interrogated. You have no clue as to what these people could have been charging you for in March and April 2013.
Chair, we had agreed with them on what work to be done with the money, and that's what we had signed off. And we had agreed after delivery. How they've been charged between them and whoever they've been using, that is their story, because it's up to them to pay, or how to pay the people that they've been using.
Back to page 1403, Mr. Thabethe.
Back to page.
1403 of the same bundle, Chairman.
Okay.
You're there, Mr. Thabethe?
Yes,
Good.
I'm there, Chair.
So if you look at application of funds, payments to creditors, 492,000, you've seen that amount. On the far right hand, in October, on the far right-hand side. Payments to creditors, you go across, 492, 525,000 rand and 33 cents. You see that number?
Yeah, I see,
Okay.
Chair.
You don't know who those creditors could have been?
No, I do not have the details, Chair.
The very next item is, again, reserved for parlor equipment, just over 1 million. You can see that.
Yes, Chair.
Then we look at some small numbers. Can we look at directors' salaries? 48,351 rand and 38 cents. Who are these directors? Was there an agreement between the department and Estina that there is a director who would be drawing a salary?
Chair, my understanding of the director that was doing the implementation, which was indicated to us, was Mr. Prasad.
No, Mr. Prasad is, I will show you when we look at the cancellation agreement and the documentation attached there. He was earning 65,000 rand a month. We can go to that in due course. It's where we have to go to, but 65,000 rand a month is what Prasad was earning. He was not a director. He was a project manager.
Yes, Chair.
Yes. Now this says directors' salaries. Who was getting this 48,000 rand?
Chair, my understanding was that the director of the project who was being paid was Mr. Prasad.
Okay, I can safely tell you that the conclusion you are coming to today is incorrect. Did you interrogate this when you saw these numbers?
Chair, like I have indicated, you see, as the Vrede dairy was not my only work to interrogate each and every line item. There were officials in the department that were looking at this and engaging on a daily basis. So it wouldn't be me sitting every day checking who's this one, who's getting paid here, because they would have been comfortable with all these things. They've been receiving these reports. So I hear, Chair, that I'm being asked this question, but I'm not in a position to respond.
But you were the accounting officer, Mr. Thabethe, and if you have got people working for you and they don't do their job properly, you take responsibility as the head of department and accounting officer. Is that not so?
I agree, Chair.
So, so what's this story about other people were checking if they were comfortable? That's it. If you trusted them enough that if they said everything was fine, you were prepared not to check, and it turns out that things were not fine, you take responsibility for that, isn't it?
Yes, Chair, I agree.
So you can't hide behind them. If you trust them that they are qualified to check certain things for you and they are credible, they are trustworthy, if they say this is okay, you are prepared to take their word without checking, and it turns out there is a problem, they didn't do their job, you are accountable.
That's what I'm agreeing with, Chair.
Yes, okay.
Maybe it is not coming across.
Well, it's coming across as if you are running away from accountability on the basis that you had people under you doing certain things, but they were doing those things because the department appointed them, and if ultimately you have got to sign off and you take their word and they said certain things have happened, you take responsibility if they have misled you, you take the responsibility if they did things wrong, they did wrong things.
I agree, Chair.
You agree? Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. I then am going to make the assumption, Mr. Thabethe, that with all the other payments that were made in October 2012, you are not able to assist this commission and explain what those payments might have been about.
Yes, Chair, it will be very difficult for me to go line by line explaining what does each one mean.
Let's move to the next monthly report, Mr. Thabethe, on page 1405. And on page 1405, the third line from the bottom essentially says, pay us the 84 million that's outstanding. We have put money in, our own money in.
I'm sorry, Mr. Washa. Did
Yes,
you
sir.
say 1405?
1405, Chairman. So this is the executive summary and the notes to the financial report.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's
And I'm
where it
just
says
summarizing.
Mahuma Mobung Vrede Dairy Project.
Correct, sir.
Yeah, okay.
I'm simply summarizing the notes to the financial report in the interest of progress, Chairman, and saying that, again, what is reflected here is in September, 250,000 was paid in. Then the second last paragraph, they tell us that they made a further capital contribution of 3.75 million in October and another 850,000 in November, all in bold, to enable the procurement of urgently needed farm equipment and accessories. Then in the last paragraph, they say, we've now made a contribution of 4.85 million. Please find that outstanding 84 million that you are supposed to be giving us. Are you comfortable with my summary of what's written here, Mr. Thabethe?
That's correct, Chair.
Let's go over the page. Now, those were notes to what's written here on page 1406. So we will now just go to November because we've dealt with October. We've dealt with August, September, October. We're now at November.
That's correct, Chair.
And this is before you secure the land at Vrede for this dairy. Is that not correct,
That's
Mr.
correct.
Thabethe? Good. So you there see the 850,000 that they say, Estina says that it put into the project. You can see that number.
Yes, Chair.
Then the other largish amount would be professional fees, 130,000. I assume that you don't know what that was about.
Yeah, I would not be able to break down what did it include, Chair.
And just above that, you've got 96,702 rand and 76 cents for, again, directors' salaries. It's double the original amount. The original amount in October was over 48,000. Now we've doubled it to 96,000. You don't know what this could represent.
I'm trying to get to the director's salary.
It was just above, Mr. Thabethe, the professional fees that I pointed out to you. Director salaries, 48,351 in October and 38 cents.
I
In
see.
November, 96,702 rand and 76 cents. It doubled,
Yeah.
essentially.
That's correct.
And you're telling us you don't know what that might have been about.
Chair, for me to be able to go back, we may need to go back to the details of what this includes, because I do not want to say I know or I don't know, because if we then break it down, it could give what is it referring to, Chair?
I just want to assure you that this amount did not represent what was paid to Mr. Prasad. So if you look at, just leave that document as it is for a minute and go to reference bundle B for Bernard. No, not there, please, Mr.
Reference
B. Reference bundle B. And we're really just dealing with Mr. Prasad because you thought this money was being paid to Mr. Prasad. I want to satisfy you that his salary of 65,000, you will find at page 576. .576 of reference bundle B, and the very first name under the list of employees at Estina Vrede, as at August 12, 2014, is that of Mr. Prasad, who is called the CEO. He's not a director, he's a CEO, and his salary was 65,000, as I indicated earlier. You will note that this document is part of the memorandum of agreement between the department and Estina when the Estina contract was cancelled.
I hear you, Chair.
And you are in agreement that that's what this represents here. This bundle of documents, if you want to, you can go through it,
Yes.
and you will get to page 576 with Mr. Prasad's name and all the other people who were employed. Mr. Prasad was a CEO, according to this document, and he was earning 65,000 rand.
That's correct, Chair. If I may talk, Chair, I'm not sure if this too refers to the same person or differently, because if I look at the monthly report, I don't see a CEO salary. So that's why it's very difficult for me to break it down. There could have been accrued payment, there could be other things. So it's a very difficult for me to explain, unless if there were a CEO in the report and here, because this was a detailed report that we had requested from Estina in terms of accounting for the funds. Hence, this one document then was then developed.
Mr. Thabethe, the simple point I'm making is you did not monitor the accounting of funds by this organization, by Estina. This is why you do not know what director salaries represents. That's the essential proposition I'm putting to you.
Yeah. Chair, until we have the details of what the director's salary involves and what payment was being made, it will be very difficult for me to explain. That is the difficulty that I have.
You should have done that exercise way back, Mr. Thabethe. You'd be speaking to the issue now because you had interrogated the issues. That's the simple point that I'm making. Can you go to page 1408, please?
Which bundle?
Same,
B.
Thank you. It's a good question, Chairman. We're back to the monthly reports. The monthly reports, it's D, Chairman.
And are we going back to 1406?
No, we're now at the next month, Chairman, 1408,
Okay.
which includes December and January, if we look at 1409. But I just want to pause on 1408. And again, the very last paragraph really represents what Estina say. These in their notes, the money that they have put into the project. They tell us here that they have made a capital contribution in cash of 5.75 million. This is the last paragraph. And they've entered into firm financial commitments to the value of 46,901,000 rand 800 into the project. So these are firm financial commitments they've made, they say. They call this bridging finance until you find the 84 million that was committed to the project for the first financial year. So they tell us they've taken a total financial exposure of 52,651,000 rand. Chairman, those numbers can be found on the very next page, Mr. Thabethe. Those were just notes to the numbers that are then on the next page. What's interesting about this, Mr. Thabethe, and I would like to know if you picked this up as well when you looked at these monthly reports, is the following. You've got December, January, with the amounts that Estina says it had an opening balance, it put certain cash in both months, and then it also sets out the purchase orders for December and January. You see that?
I see, Chair.
Good. Then they talk about the application of funds, and they tell us how they applied those funds over that quarter. You're happy with that? Just that they've written the numbers down.
Okay, Chair.
What concerns me here, Mr. Thabethe, is if you look at application of funds, and I don't know if you're able to explain it at all. You have the 30 million grant that they received from you in July 2012. And then under application of funds, you have 30 million and 50,000 under reserved for parlor equipment.
That's correct, Chair.
Yes? You then have purchase orders that were confirmed, 46,901,000. You see that number?
Yes, I see, Chair.
Are you able, Mr. Thabethe, to explain where that 30 million, that is the grant received from DARD, might have been applied under application of funds? Is there somewhere here where you think that first 30 million was applied under the heading application of funds? Is my question clear? I'm just asking for your assistance here. We know you gave them 30 million. They have applied funds to this project. Can you see anywhere here where those funds were applied?
Chair, I'm trying to find the application of fund.
So at the top you have cash flow, position of Estina Pty Limited, Vrede Dairy Project. You've seen that heading?
Yes, I see, yes.
Below that you have source of funds.
Yes.
Below that you have application of funds.
It's written in blue on the left-hand side.
Oh, okay, I see, Chair. Which refers to that entire column. I see it now, Chair.
And you have it per month. Each month, this is how
Yes.
they applied money. This is how they applied funds.
That's
This is how
correct,
they
Chair.
applied funds.
That's correct, Chair.
And you have a cumulative total at the end.
That's correct, Chair.
All I'm asking is, are you able, under the application of funds columns, to find the use of the 30 million you advanced? That's all I want to know.
Chair, The application of fund, you'll be able to see under reserved for Pala, I still see it under cumulative still being 30 million. And then confirmed, which says purchase of orders. I see an allocation of in December and an allocation in January.
I'm only asking you to identify where you think the 30 million you advanced was used. I'm seeking your assistance in looking at these numbers and identifying where the 30 million you advanced could possibly have been used, looking at this cumulative set of numbers.
Is your question aimed establishing whether he realizes that as at the time of this report, that 30 million rand does not appear to have actually been used yet?
Indeed so, Chairman.
Yes.
Because it's a lot of money, and I just want to understand
Yes.
if he can find it anywhere here.
Yes, you said, Mr. Thabethe, that when you look at page 1409, you see that the 30 million is put there as reserved for Pala equipment.
Yes.
You said that, eh?
Yes, Chair.
Yes. Do you accept that as at the time of this document, it had not been used as yet?
Because I can still see it, Chair, on the right-hand side under cumulative.
Yes. Does that mean the answer is yes?
Yes, according to this report, Chair, I don't see the application, but I see still the accumulation.
Yes, okay. Does that help, Mr. Bash?
No, it not really, Chairman. I simply, maybe I should rephrase the question. We can all see that 30 million right at the top under
Yes.
the cumulative amount against grant received from DAD.
That's
That
correct.
was received. Then they tell us how they applied the funds. If you remember the very first month we looked at, we had 29 million that was reserved. Then we had another 1,050,000 that was reserved. That takes us to that 30,050,000.
That's
Yes? I'm trying to understand, but I need your help to understand this. I'm trying to understand whether that 30,050,000 one should set off against the 30 million you paid in July of 2012. I'm just trying to make sense of the figures, and I was hoping you could help. Is that the same money? Or is it a totally different amount? This 30,050,000.
I'm not following, Chair.
You remember the 30 million rand that you had paid in July
Yes,
2012?
Yes, Chair.
You see at page 1409,
Yes, Chair.
there is an amount of 30,050,000 rand
Yes, Chair.
reserved for Pala equipment.
Yes, Chair.
The question is whether your understanding is that this amount relates to or is the same amount or is connected with the amount of 30 million rand that you paid in July, or whether it's just a separate amount altogether. What is your understanding now? What was your understanding when you looked at these reports?
Chair, because I see it is still in the same column, but another 1 million has been added to back to 30. Because it was 29 all along, indicating that it was a reserved amount. So my understanding is that we are still referring to the same amount.
Please go back to page 1403, Mr. Thabethe.
Yes, Chair.
You see your 29 million that you've just referred to.
Yes.
If you go across, and so that was in July. If you go across the same line item, you find the 1,050,000. No. Oh, are you checking something else?
1403.
1403, sir.
Yes, Chair.
So there's the 29 million that you've just been talking about.
Yes.
If you take your finger across to October, you find the 1,050,000.
That's correct. That's correct.
That
Chair.
gives us 30,050,000.
That's correct.
Keep your finger there, please, Mr. Thabethe, and go back to 1409,
Yes, Chair.
where you find that 30,050,000.
That's correct, Chair.
So I'm trying to put these two sets of figures together. And I'm trying to understand whether the total of the 29 million plus the 1,050,000 that was reserved takes us across to that 30 million on the other side.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm just asking for your help in understanding this. It's money you were in control of.
Yeah.
Just hang on. So is the question still whether it's the same amount, it's the same money?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Mr. Thabethe?
Yes, I think it's the same money, Chair, the way I look at it.
So you believe that that 30,050,000 is that grant money that you had paid in July of 2012?
That's correct,
That has
Chair.
now been put here, reserved for parlor equipment.
Yes.
But now, my difficulty with that, this is why I needed your help in understanding these numbers, is if that is the case, it should be reflecting as a credit, not as a debit item. It's money you had already advanced. So here, it can't be that it's a amount that is being debited to you. Are you with me?
Yeah, Chair, if you would remember, if I'm correct, January has been the month where we had signed off.
Correct.
That we are happy now with the work done.
Correct.
Which means we could then agree that that money has been spent.
The difficulty with what you're saying is here, the line item says reserved for parlor equipment. And that's why I said to you earlier, these things don't add up. But I was hoping you would assist us in unscrambling this. It can't be that money that was reserved for parlor equipment is the same amount that then paid for all those items on that Annexure A that you signed off on. You need to help us here, Mr. Thabethe.
What could be the problem, Chair, for this money to pay for?
This money here was reserved for parlor equipment. That's what's written here. I'm just reading what's written here. You agree that's what's written here?
Yes, I agree, Chair.
So the same money could not have paid off the items on the page that has your obligations. I'm taking you back there, page 1378. Page 1378.
I hear
You've
you,
got
Chair.
it. So it means essentially you had to find more money to pay for the obligations that are set out on page 1378. Because the 30 million on page 1412 was reserved for parlor equipment.
Yes, Chair. That's what we remember. My argument was that, but when the time comes for us to be able to have that money available, it must be available. Indeed, here when we said the work was done, then the money was made available for us to be able to pay. Now, what I understand is that they then issued purchase orders to be able to counter that money because we had already then, we needed it back to pay for what it was meant for. So then they had to issue their own purchase orders for those reserved equipment for us to be able to say, this money, the time has come for it to be spent where it was supposed to be spent. Then the money was released for that purpose.
You see, if you look at the very next line item, confirmed purchase orders issued.
Yes.
46,901,000 rand.
That's correct.
It's a different sum. It's
Yes.
not related at all to the 30 million.
Chair, what I can explain is that the 30 million was released in January for us to be able to pay for what it was intended for. Hence, we released it.
No, Mr. Thabethe, you did not release any money in January of 2013. The next payment you made to Estina to cover the 84 million that was outstanding could only be paid in the new financial year. Remember, we had that discussion.
Yeah, Chair, releasing it means when I signed off that letter that says the following work, which we had intended for the 30 million, that was our release from our side to say that money can then be used to pay for the work done. I'm not saying we made another money paid. We had said this money was for this purpose. We are now signing off that the work has been done in January.
So if you go to page 1452, 1452. You find the payments that were made to Estina.
Yes, Chair.
The first one, of course, was that July 2012 payment that we've all agreed on.
That's correct.
And it's still hanging in limbo because I still am not sure whether that money paid for Annexure A, those obligations, or whether that money was reserved for parlor equipment. There's still no clarity in my head. But be that as it may, the next item, you then, in April of 2013, pay 34,950,000 rand. You can see that number.
That's correct, Chair.
Now, my understanding of what you've just said now in your evidence is that you were now paying for the Annexure A obligations. Is that what you were saying?
No, I'm not saying
Please
so, Chair.
Then explain what the 34,950 was about. 34 million?
No. I'm on the 30, Chair.
On the
advance.
July 2012 30?
Yes.
Yes.
Which was signed off in January to say the work for the 30 million has been done. That's what I was saying, Chair.
There was a question about the 34 million.
So when the 34,950,000 was being paid by the department,
Yes.
what did you understand that to be for?
The 34 million, Chair, the 34 plus the 30 plus the 19 is referring to the 84 million.
What was that money supposed to be used for, Mr. Thabethe?
This was the money was supposed to be used for the implementation, which was then inclusive of the parlor equipments, the tractors, and all those things that have been done. So it was a range of activities for this amount. So it is the money that they've been referring to say you haven't paid the 84 million. So if you add the 34, the 30 plus the 19 refers to the 84 million.
Yes, but my question is, what was the 84 million paying for when you look at your monthly statements? Because they are telling you here, we're doing this work, we are reserving these orders. What was your 84 million paying for?
Chair, to get to that, then it means we need to go through all the monthly statement from and be able to say, in this month, this was used for that, this month was used for that. So I would not be able to say what, because there are monthly statement each month that should be able to account for the total amount.
Mr. Thabethe, the ones you have before you go all the way through to February 2013. They tell you exactly what they were applying their funds,
Yes.
the funds they were now putting in,
Yes, Chair.
what that money was being used for.
Chair, we are not together because
Yes.
the 84 she's referring to was paid in April. It means the money that has been paid in April should cover work until April or end of March, to say these are the amounts that this money was meant for. And you should also be able to say this work that Estina has been doing was the part that the department has been responsible for. It's not yet the processing plant. It means partly some of this money we had to say, you had already done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the development of the dairy. It's our responsibility to have done that work. So those issues that they have been doing, the planting that was done in December, January, which they had accounted for, is the work that should have been done by the department.
Let's just sum up on this aspect. I want to move on to a new aspect, Mr. Thabethe. If we go back to page 1372 of the same bundle of documents. (1372). And
Yes, Chair.
the $5 million that we had said earlier came to about 49 million South African rands, you know nothing about.
Yes, Chair.
The 30 million that was advanced in July 2012, you believe was used to pay for phase 1 obligations.
That's correct, Chair.
You have, that's next question, you have no idea as to what the reservation for parlor equipment amount of 30 million might be in relation to the 30 million that you advanced in July. There's no relationship between the two. In other words, between the 30 million you advanced in July 2012 and this amount of 30 million and 50,000 that is recorded under the cumulative amounts of the monthly statements as reserved for parlor equipment.
Chair, that money was put under an item called reserve for parlor equipment by end of January.
Which money?
The 30 million.
Which 30 million?
That's the 30 million we had released as an advance payment, Chair.
Okay.
Which was then in January indicated as spent because we had already signed off. That that money can now, because remember I had said, we had said to them, when that work is done, that money must be made available. And indeed, when we said the work was done, that money was released.
If you go to page 1368, same document.
1368.
Are you there?
Yes, I'm there, Chair.
Now, this letter is a letter from Gateway dated 9 July 2013, directed to Estina. And in this letter, essentially, they're setting out what they have ordered for the milk pasteurizing plant for Vrede Dairy Farm. And they tell Estina that they are now placing final orders with their vendors for the pasteurizing equipment, incorporating the data management system. Yes?
Yes, Chair.
They continue to give a bank account. They say they need a deposit of 20% as an advance payment to secure the order in the third paragraph. Then they give their bank details, and the last paragraph reads, upon your transfer of the requested amount, we will initiate action to place orders and will send you a detailed project plan for delivery and installation. You see that?
I see, Chair.
Do you know anything at all about this negotiation?
No, Chair. I don't know. Remember, ours was to say to them, we need a parlor equipment, and this is the parlor equipment. How they've been doing as long as they bring the item that we want. How they've been managing and handling that, it was Estina that was doing it.
You see, I asked...
Our comfort, Chair, was when the item comes and we go and check and we say, yes, this is the item. It has been delivered.
You see, I ask you because this is the area where Estina now had to put money into the project. If you look at the very next page, you see a breakdown of the pasteurizing plant. Go to the next page, 1369.
Yes, Chair. If I may say, Chair, when I look at the date of this letter, it's dated July 9, 2013. By this time, we had already paid the 84 million. I think they had money in their possessions from the department to be able to do this work. You remember, we had taken me now through the 3 payments that we had done. And by this time, that's why I don't want to refer to the letter. My expectation was that the work must be delivered.
This is where my difficulty sits, Mr. Thabethe.
Yes, Chair.
And which is why I said to you, the work that is referred to in this letter from Gateway at page 1368
Yes, Chair.
ought to be work that was paid for by Estina from their contribution to the project.
No, Chair. The contribution of Estina had not started. We're still building the dairy. We're not yet in the processing plant.
Mr. Thabethe, this is why I was asking you to look at the next page, because it explains what's going on on page 1368. Here you have dairy pasteurizing equipment with DMB,
Okay.
milk
Okay.
reception, tanks, milk processing and packing. Over the page, butter and ghee section, utilities. All of these are items that refer to the processing of milk that has been pasteurized.
My apology, Chair.
Yes,
Then-
you understand
then
now.
I've answered the wrong question,
Okay.
Chair. Now I realize that this letter refers to processing equipment. My apology, Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Thabethe, so my basic question is this. You say you knew nothing at all about this letter and what they were preparing to do in relation to this letter.
I wouldn't, Chair. All I know is that Estina was supposed to start their contribution into the project in the second phase.
Now, Mr. Thabethe, it is important for the department to know when and how Estina is putting its own money into the processing plant, isn't it? It would have been important.
That's correct, Chair.
And these documents speak to the processing plant.
That's correct, Chair.
My-
And Chair, this is not the report to the department. It's a letter Estina writes to...
No, Gateway writes to Estina. I did say that.
Okay,
Yes.
that's correct.
It's clearly titled. It's written to Estina.
That's correct.
And a 20% deposit is sought.
That's,
Are you sure that the department did not pay this 20% deposit? That's my question to you.
Chair, it's a very difficult question to
Well, you either know that to be the case or you don't know it to be the case.
I don't know it to be the case, Chair. I think
Yes.
that's the correct thing to do.
Are you sure that that reserved for parlor equipment line item is not money that was going to be spent on this account that seeks a 20% deposit?
Chair, we had already spent the 30 million. That's why I can say I am safely sure that that is not the money spent. It might have been used to reserve, but as a department, we had spent it by this time. So it wouldn't be the money.
Chairman, if I might move on to the next point.
Yes, but yeah, that's fine.
I now just want us to very briefly look at the cancellation of the contract, Mr. Thabethe. We've looked at these monthly statements. You've said you really know very little about them. That's the essence of your evidence, with one or two qualifications. Can I ask you to please look at two documents? The first one is, we're going back to reference file B, where Mr. Prasad's salary was. That's the document, it's the memorandum of agreement, really. We're just looking at that very briefly. And you've got that memorandum of agreement between the department. It's at page 563, reference bundle B.
What
Yes.
page again?
563, Chairman,
We're going back
to reference bundle B, Chairman. We're dealing with a totally different topic now.
Okay. I see
563.
some unauthorized cameras that are standing, that have been put in there. Yes, thank you. Yes, continue.
So we are now looking at this particular agreement,
Yes, Chair.
the cancellation agreement. And if you go to page 564, we're looking at the obligations of the department.
Thank you.
And I simply want to understand, Mr. Thabethe, how Estina arrived at the amount of 106,252,000 rand, 652. That quantum, that total quantum, do you know how they arrived at that amount that they said was outstanding?
Yes, I do, Chair.
Please explain it to the chairman.
Chair, the 106 included two items. The one part of the item was for the processing plant, which they had put up, which we were now terminating the agreement and saying we were taking over the processing plant. And a certain portion of this money was still money that we were owing to them in respect of what they had done in the dairy. So the two together made 106.
Now, I would like to ask you to go back to file D, which we were using for the monthly reports. Don't close this one, please. Are you there?
Yeah.
File D, page 1171. where you will find NS 1171, Chairman.
Please, just hang on 1 second. Did you say D?
D, where the
Okay.
monthly reports
Just
were,
check here.
Chairman. 1171.
Yes.
There you will find a report by a company called Diomart. And this is a report that was prepared on the 12th of May 2017. And it's an assessment of the processing plant you've just told us about.
That's correct, Chair.
Now, they say this assessment report is based on a 6-day visitation to the farm by their team. You see that, it's written there.
That's correct.
The report highlights the current scenario of the plant and thus points to a need for an intervention or change in strategy. Number 1, building. The building needs to be rehabilitated to satisfy HACCP and food and safety compliance. You see that.
I see, Chair.
Below is some of the reasons, is what's written here. 1, the ammonia cooling system is in the same building and not sealed off 100%. 2, it is not bird, dust, or rodent proof. 3, there is no ceiling in the building. 4, the drains is not installed correctly. Hygiene and safety problems may occur. 5, drain pipes is made of PVC and will perish when subjected to hot water over time. 6, there is no extraction fans in the building. 7, building needs 10% natural light, in brackets, windows. 8, the milk reception area must be outside the factory. 9, the cooling room is too small. 10, the fresh milk silos must be outside with their own CIP system. 11, the process flow needs to be reconfigured. This is the key factor in ensuring that the processing plant is considered for compliance. Over the page, they elaborate on all the inadequacies of that processing plant. I will not go through them in detail, but they are very, very important points that they set out. As they say, for instance, right at the top, all pipes need to be replaced as a result of quality, size, and workmanship. Chairman, I don't, in the interest of time, want to go through every flaw, but this report is an assessment report, Mr. Thabethe, that sets out all the things that are wrong with that processing plant. Hence my question. What were you paying 106 million rand for when you took over that processing plant?
Yeah, Chair, this report, the intention of this report was to assess and configure the project. Because you'll remember that the project in terms of the design and the specification was done on the basis of what Paras would want. Since we have terminated the contract, we now, in 2007, require that a reassessment of...
2017, you mean?
2017, my apology,
Yes.
Chair. We require then a reassessment to reconfigure remember, it's an incomplete project that was held. It was not complete at that time because the cost if I remember very well, Chair, it was the completed project was going to cost 228. That was the injection that Astina was to do. Now, the processing plant sitting at 206, it means it was incomplete when we terminated. Then this company will then go in and say, let's reassess and say, for us to reconfigure this project, what is it that we need to do? And that is what the report is for. Because the processing plant was done, and when we were halfway with it, we put it on hold. Hence, it is sitting in the terminating agreement.
Well, I think what Mr. Bashe is saying to you is this report, or let me rephrase that. Do you accept that this report is a correct, provides a correct position of what the writers of the report found on the farm?
That's correct, Chair.
You accept that?
That's correct.
Now, if one looks at the report, I think Mr. Bashe is saying a number of things there seem not to have been right, for which you may have paid. And she asked the question, how could you have paid what you paid if this was the position? Now, Mr. Bashe, you must please intervene if I'm misrepresenting what I think you are.
Chairman, you've summarized it correctly. If I might just add, Chairman, that
Yes.
on page 1180, you get an amount that they believe would have to be paid to fix most of those things. But the summary is correct, Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, Chair, that is correct. Hence I've put the wording reconfigure. Because if you do an assessment on the basis of putting up a new product, remember, Paras was going to put a product on the table. Now, this assessment was not on the basis of the product that was initially envisaged. It means for the new product, then there should be a reconfiguration. Hence I'm saying it does not reflect to be saying this has not been correct.
Well, well, you seem to be answering the question with regard to the future as at the time of the report.
That's correct, Chair.
But as I understand Mr. Bashe's question, it's with regard to the history, the time before that, to say, how could you have paid what you paid if this is what the position was as described in the report?
That's correct, Chair, but the intention is exactly in terms of this report looking into the future.
Yes, no, you don't. I don't know whether to say you don't understand, but she is saying you were not justified. You were wrong to have paid what you have paid if this is what you were paying for. What do you say?
No, it's not, Chair.
You say you were right to pay what you paid for this?
Yes, in terms of the plans and the designs, it was right.
Mr. Bashe, I know that your Leonard juniors are assisting you, but I am keen that you follow the exchange because I don't want to misrepresent what I think you were pursuing.
Indeed so, Chairman.
Yes, so I think you must just give your answer again, Mr. Thabethe, as to whether you say you were justified to pay what you paid for what is described in the report.
Yes, Chair. In terms of the designs under which the processing plant was being done, it was correct. But in terms of the reconfiguration, certain things had to be changed. Because if you reconfigure, it means you are making changes from what you had originally wanted to do.
Yes, I'm allowing Ms. Thabethe to deal with your answer.
Only because the report clearly tells us that, and I'm going back to what I'd read into the record, the ammonia cooling system, what was installed was inadequate. And I set out all the factors that Diomart found to be flaws in what had been installed. That's what you are paying for. We're not talking about the reconfiguration, Mr. Thabethe. We're talking about what you found, and that's what you were paying for.
And you say it was correct to
Yeah.
make those payments, which for things that these people found to have been, among other things, inadequate.
Yeah, Chair, I'm trying to think, because to explain this thing, I must use an illustration, and I must be very careful in using the illustration.
Yes.
Because if you put a processing plant to achieve a specific outcome, you have a particular configuration. You have a particular configuration that somebody else might come and do an assessment and say, no, when I produce this product, this becomes my configuration. Now, that is my understanding, that it will not be the same. For you to achieve a particular configuration, you have your own specification, and somebody else to be able to produce. It's just that I want to use an illustration, Chair, that I may not be allowed to use.
Well, let me put this, as I understand what Ms. Thabethe's concern on this is.
Yes.
Let's use an example. You say somebody must go and look around and get you a car. You want to buy a car.
That's correct, Chair.
And then the person says, I found a car for you. It costs 20 rand. Okay, for argument's sake. You pay 20 rand. Somebody comes later on, let's say a motor mechanic, looks at the car and says, but it's inadequate for the purpose for which you wanted the car. But you have paid so much. So the question is, how can you say it's correct to pay what you have paid when what you wanted is inadequate or is not exactly what it should have been? Mr. Thabethe?
Chairman, can I actually just go back to
Yes.
the specific report?
Yes, okay.
And the bits that I did not read because I thought
Yes.
there was no contest about what was written here.
Okay, give him
Under
context.
item 2, pipelines, tanks, and equipment. I'm on page 1172. All pipes need to be replaced as a result of quality, size, and workmanship. B, the boiler must be replaced with a 3-ton diesel boiler. The installed boiler is a safety hazard. It is worth noting that this model is no longer in making for years. Item C, the tanks need replacement as a result of suitability, poor quality, and food unsafety. Item D, valves, taps, and pumps are outdated and may face a challenge getting spares. E, joint welding needs to be done correctly. In some instances, a normal steel pipe is welded to a stainless steel instead of using a suitable joint. Pasteurizer. The machine is not suitable for pasteurizing, will not pass the pressure test, and is bent. It appears to have been rebuilt and poorly installed. 4, separator. The equipment needs replacement. The installed machinery is an old manual model that is not suitable for latest operations. 5, cleaning in place system. The tanks is pitted and rusted on the inside. It is a down to drain system that is not suitable for a fresh milk factory. It still needs 3 complete dosing systems and 3 conductivity controls. There is no circulation on the tanks to control the strength of the chemicals. The dosing pipe is too big for the system. Number 6, sachet filler. The market does not respond very well to the sachet milk units. A bottling machine would be a better option. 7, ammonia cooling. System needs replacement. Condenser on the outside is old technology. 8, air compressor. No air lines in the factory. The system still needs air dryer and air receiving tanks fitted. 9, laboratory. There is an allocated space for laboratory, but no setup yet. 10, homogenizer must still be bought. 11, flow meters must still be bought. 12, steam and cold water lines must be insulated. 13, heat exchangers. This needs pressure testing. 14, manufacturing dates. It is very difficult to determine the age of the equipment. All of the manufacturing dates, names, and information was removed from the equipment. Recommendations. The recommendations will be in line with addressing the above concerns or problem areas. Additional questions arising. 1, how much milk is the factory going to process per day? 2, product line. 3, how is the milk going to be transported from the milking parlour to the factory? 4, is there sufficient water for the factory? For each 1 liter of milk, 3.5 liters of water is needed for cleaning. 5, if milk is bought from smaller or other suppliers, how will it be collected and transported? 6, is there a comprehensive marketing strategy in place? I would like you to accept, Mr. Thabethe, that the issues flagged, certainly on page 1 and 2, that's 1171 and 1172, speak to the quality of what you were sold. My conclusion is you were taken for a ride. That you knew that you were being taken for a ride is a completely different issue. But from what I'm reading here, what they installed is not what you expected them to install.
Yeah, Chair, I would not dispute what he is saying. What we had to pay was the work done on the ground up to that stage. We later, when I'm trying to get the correct name here, the Free State Development Corporation then did this assessment through the agent that they had appointed to be able to get an understanding. The question that I still wanted to know, the details of the question, was what is the value of what was standing on the ground versus what was paid? Because the report talks to, this still needs to be corrected. It did not come to a stage where it says, but what is currently standing here is of this value.
Well, Mr. Thabethe, the report seems to me to show that what was provided to the farm on the basis of the arrangement that you had with Estina was inadequate in certain respects, was of low quality in certain respects, and was not acceptable and should not have been provided according to the authors of this report. They even refer to an equipment where they say it was rusted. Now, I don't know whether it was equipment or pipes or whatever, but they refer to that. And I recall quite clearly that some time back there was a witness who gave evidence here. I can't remember who it was.
Mr. Basson.
Mr. Basson, who said he looked at the equipment that had been brought on to the farm, I think from India, and he realized that it was rusted. It was not new equipment that was being brought. He gave that evidence. And this report seems to be consistent, or seems to corroborate that, at least in parts, that version. So do you accept, and I think you did accept, that what the report says, the people who prepared the report found, is what was there? In other words, it's not like they just made things up. Is that right? You accept that?
Chair, I accept that.
Yes.
The only difficulty I have is to put monetary value into it.
Well, we might deal with that later. The question is, how did it come about that you allowed Estina to do this and you did not pick it up yourself? When I say yourself, I mean you as the department, and of course you were the head of department. How did it come about that you did not ensure that if they provided you with wrong things, wrong equipment, low quality equipment, how did it come about that you as the department did not pick it up?
Yeah, Chair, when work is done, and we had all agreed that the processing plant initially was the responsibility of Estina to set up. It only came when we were terminating the agreement that we were also taking over the processing plant. And during that time, we were then looking at to what extent and how much have been paid so that we are able then to take it over ourselves. That's what we were looking at that particular time. I'm not disputing the report, Chair, because the report is actually saying for us to be able to move forward, this is what we need to fix. But at that particular time, that is what we had agreed and paid for.
But the report is also in effect saying, this is what has been wrong in the past. Do you want me to clarify that? I'm simply saying, in order for it to tell you what you need to attend to going forward, it tells you what the position is and what the position must have been for some time. You understand that?
Yeah, the difficulty is, if the processing plant was being built for the department, I would agree. But this processing plant, they were building, it was their obligation to build it. Now, there wouldn't be any reason for them to shortchange themselves. That would be my thinking. as I am sitting chair, that you build a house for yourself and you are shortchanging yourself in the building. Instead of doing it properly, you don't do it the correct way. And later then it will catch up with you.
Mr. Bashe, I leave you to follow up on that if you want to.
I simply want to make the point, Chairman, that as the Chairman has consistently pointed out, this was the department's project. It's your project. It's not Estina's project. So they're shortchanging the department at the end of the day. It's your facility. These are your beneficiaries who are going to be 51% owners of this facility. So the department is being shortchanged by this substandard work, substandard material that's been brought into the project by Estina. Would you agree with me?
Yeah, Chair, I agree that because we were party shareholding into the project that they were putting up. And if it would not have been done properly, it means the beneficiation also would have been compromised.
But Chairman, if I might close, I know it's lunchtime, but just with the letter, Mr. Thabethe, I want to refer you to in reference bundle E. We have not used it today, so it's a new one. E for eggs. Page 1643. This is a letter written to the Managing Director at Estina by yourself, Mr. Thabethe. It's dated the 12th of August, 2014. Now, the 12th of August was the termination date, if I recall correctly.
That's correct.
This is what you write. Dear sir, handover of assets and billing methods subsequent to the cancellation of agreement between Department of Agriculture and Rural Development and yourselves. 1. Kindly refer to the cancellation agreement signed between the department and yourselves dated August 12, 2014. 2. Further, please refer to the physical handover of assets to the Free State Development Corporation through the department on August 12, 2014. 3, please be informed that the department is still in the process of processing your payments as per the payment schedule indicated in the agreement. 4, we are also in the process of finalizing the entity that will ultimately be responsible for running the project. 5, as such, we would request you not to raise the tax invoice in part or full for the handover of the assets until the complete payments as per the agreement is transferred to your account. As soon as the payment is done, you may raise a tax invoice for the full value of the project to the entity that will be intimated to you at the time. 6, in the interim, the handover of assets may be effected via a handover document. This is your letter.
That's correct, Chair.
Please explain paragraph 5 to the Chairman. I couldn't understand it.
Yeah, Chair, paragraph 5 is actually saying you can't claim tax from us until you have made all the requirements. You can only, because you see, if they give us a tax invoice, it will mean we must also pay the tax into them. And when then I drafted this letter, we had agreed with the state law advisors that we must just make sure for now that they do not raise tax through us in this regard. That was the intention, that they shouldn't in the invoice tax us.
Chairman, whenever Mr. Thabethe brings the state advisors in, I get very worried. On that note, might we take the lunch adjournment and we will pursue this matter after lunch?
Yes, it's 1 o'clock. We'll take the lunch adjournment and we'll resume at 2. We adjourn.
All rise.
Tedious.